Back on MorningLine, thanks for joining us. Professor Mark Schwartz with us from over at Lipscomb. Good to have him on. He's been there for 12 years, did you tell me?
Mm-hmm.
12 years. He says it's a good gig, and I think it is. Lipscomb's a great school. It's a great school. Thanks for coming on this morning. We can take your phone call, 737-7587. I was going to say, as you talk about what the Republican Party is going to look at, one thing that I sense that, within the establishment that they're so frustrated at is that they looked at this coming presidential election, and they knew that likely Hillary Clinton would be the Democratic nominee, and they thought to ourselves, the presidency is ours. It was theirs for the taking because of her high negatives. Do you believe had Marco Rubio or had Kasich or Christie or Cruz won the nomination and they were head-to-head, I firmly believe, and I'm not saying they're necessarily better candidates than Trump, but I firmly believe this race, I think they'd be leading Hillary right now.
It would be a very different kind of race. Okay?
I think it would be much tighter.
Well, I think that one thing you have to look at, though, is just as Trump has alienated a lot of that that establishment. What he's also done is bring in enormous numbers of new voters to the Republican primary who didn't normally participate. So what do you want? Do you want a Republican retread who doesn't gin up a lot of enthusiasm among the base, because they've basically been demoralizing that base for several years now?
But still, they're all going to get the vote. They're not going to vote for Clinton, that
They're
base.
not going to vote, but they may not show up. And see, that was what sunk Romney in 2012.
That's the wild card.
It's people who didn't show up, especially people who identify as real, as very extreme conservatives.
That probably cost Romney. It's just, to me, though, I've heard some say that the Republican Party had the presidency and they nominated the one person with equal or higher negatives than the one person that can't beat Hillary Clinton, is what they said. Now, who knows? That may not play out. But that's what people are thinking. Had it been Marco Rubio, for instance,
again, there are a couple of individuals you can point to who could make a better case as an acceptable candidate, but would they have been able to go up against her?
They just wouldn't have had the level of negatives.
Wouldn't have the level of negatives.
She has far higher negatives than any of those other candidates.
Certainly they do. But again, if you don't get the enthusiasm.
Yeah, and certainly Trump has got the enthusiasm going. So I guess point taken, but I just wonder, so many of them.
This is a frustration, anxiety election.
Yeah.
And so if you're frustrated and you also are anxious, is Marco Rubio really going to be the one to comfort you?
Yeah.
Or make you feel better about things?
Fair enough, fair enough. And
nice guy. I think he's got a bright future, but I think he was also exposed as not seasoned enough to really be on that stage.
But you think we'll see several of those faces from the Republican side in 4 years?
If Trump loses in 2 weeks, or certainly. And Rubio's going to be one of those, because Rubio has done a pretty good job of reasserting himself and getting him back into the Senate.
Yeah, and we know Cruz will try,
Cruz is an interesting character. I don't know what he's going to do.
Well, it was weird because he made that statement at the convention about vote your conscience and got all those boos, and then just a couple weeks ago he endorsed Trump. You know, and it's like, what do you believe? And you're right, that's weird. That's weird.
Also, the whole Christian conservative movement, I think, has also had its moment, and I think it's a little bit on the decline as people start to separate their beliefs, their Christian beliefs, and who they vote for, and also seeing the political party as the vehicle for preserving and for changing things in the direction that they want to go.
Gotcha. Let's go to Barry. Hi, Barry. Good morning.
Yes, good morning. First thing is, I'd like to take and give this man I'm reading out a book, Constitution, oath to be taken by the president. And before notice it says before he enter on the execution of notice I said his office, he shall take the following oath for affirmation. I do solemnly swear or affirm that I will faithfully execute the office of President of the United States and will, to the best of my ability, preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States.
Yep.
And the reason I'm reading that is it's just like this. I don't care who says it or what says it. This is out of the Constitution. I'm not interpreting it. I am not, in my opinion, it's what it says. It says he and his. It does not say she and hers. And this ain't the only place it says it in this Article 2. In Article 2. And you're talking about Ted Cruz. If Ted Cruz was born in Canada, in Article 2, paragraph 4 says, no person except a natural born citizen or a citizen of the United States, the time, notice it says, at the time of the adoption of this Constitution. Excuse me, gentlemen, it says more there, but nobody is still living today at the time of the signing of this Constitution. Only thing that's left is no person except a natural born citizen. It does not take a professor. It does not take anybody else, except everybody needs to read these things themselves and get our country back to adhering to the Constitution.
And your take is that it's pretty clear that only a man should be president.
I didn't say this. Our Constitution said this, Mr. Nick.
Okay. No, I mean, you read the Constitution. It says he. Would you plan clarifying, because that's absurd. All right. It's absurd, but it does say he, according to whatever interpretation he was reading.
Well,
yeah, I mean, Article 2, but does it say he? If it says he from back then, maybe they never imagined a woman might be president.
Well,
then,
I think they could imagine a woman as a head of state.
Yes.
Because they did know about Elizabeth I.
Yeah.
They knew about
other countries,
others who had been heads of state. So I don't think that's quite what was intended with that. Again, they weren't really thinking about women having the ability to be president. They weren't even really considering women having the ability to vote at this point. They were simply saying, we're going to take what we know at this time and improve on and get away from the system that we are used to.
Yeah.
So I think that's pretty much a non-starter. But at the same time, you know, I understand his desire to say, you know what, we've gotten away from what we know or what we are founded on. There's a very large segment of the population that says we are moving far away from these things, and that's leading us into troublesome areas.
Yeah, and listen, I think maybe that was the gist there. I mean, you can get too literal in your interpretation, and reading he and thinking it means only a man is, in my opinion, wrong, and there's no debate there. But on the other hand, interpretation is part of what we do with the Constitution. It's what the Supreme Court does every single day.
It does.
You have to have some means of interpreting it, but I agree with you too, though. The Constitution, you know, everything
only
from
so much you can
freedoms and rights and all this, it gets twisted around sometimes.
There's only so much you can twist it before it's not even what you say it says.
Right. Right, and that's where, you've got to be careful, but that's what our justices do, which is a whole other issue about why this next president will be important.
And arguably, the most important decision that president will make is Supreme Court justices.
Yes, and this next president, especially if this next president happens to stick around for 8 years, we're thinking at least possibly 3 justices. Yeah. Considering the age. 3 justices. It's a huge number, and whoever's elected will have a hand in that, obviously. Let's go to David. Hi, David.
Hi, how y'all?
Oh, good. How are you, Dave?
Oh, we'll know more about it after I get done talking to you.
Okay, you go ahead, buddy.
All right, this is David Play, and I'm an ex-rodeo cowboy from back in the 60s. And Clinton is nothing but an extension of Obama. You see how he has messed up this country for 8 years, and Clinton is going to do the same thing. She's wanting to bring all these Muslims to this country. The average in the United States of America does not want all them Muslims in America, because they're doing the same thing here that they're doing in their own country. And they got us involved in their business, and we got no business sticking our nose in their country's business.
Okay, well, you know what? It's fair to say, and we touched on it earlier, that the president currently is campaigning for Hillary because he sees her as maybe continuing some of his policies. But how similar do you see, how different do you think Hillary would be as president than President Obama?
I think that she would be a little bit more aggressive in terms of not being as wedded to perhaps a multilateral approach to some of these foreign policy crises. Okay. I also think that she would be much more of a deal maker. She's been involved in politics actually longer than President Obama has. And I think that because of especially the example of her husband, with his advice, with his input, you'd see a lot more deal making that goes on. Especially because I do think the Republicans retain control of the House. And if there's anybody who knows how to triangulate, who knows how to compromise your opponents and stuff like that, I think it would be someone like Bill Clinton. Yeah. And also Hillary Clinton. I mean, Hillary Clinton's picked up a lot of things,
over the years,
in being involved in this for the last 30 or 40 or however many years it is. So I think what you have there is a different approach, because she is not like President Obama. President Obama tends to revert back to his, I'm going to talk to you. He's much like a professor. I mean, that's what I've heard from people who support him. And that takes on a tone of, I'm going to tell you what I have, and then, okay, you can react to that. Hillary Clinton is going to go to people and say, hey, what can we do about this? She's a deal maker.
Okay.
I mean, not quite as much as someone like, as overtly as a Trump would be, but she is someone who doesn't seem as ideologically based on things. She's not so caught up in the actual ideas or the purity of those ideas as someone like an intellectually inclined type like President Obama is. And so I think you just have a very different style when it comes to that. And I think he's right in the sense of she's going to continue that legacy. And she's going to work in those ways. She's not a revolutionary in the sense of, I'm going to change everything. She has this history of supporting something when it's in her interest and changing her mind when it isn't.
Gotcha. All right, on that note, we'll take a break. More calls, our final segment with our guest as we talk presidential politics right after this. Stay with us.